Hello, I'm Bernard Hickey from interest.co.nz and welcome to another of our series of double shot interviews with people with interesting things to say. And today we've got David Seymour, who is the ACT Party leader and the MP for Epsom, and crucially, in the way that our parliament's set up, often makes decisions about where legislation goes.
Oh, I think we use our power very proportionally and responsibly.
Yeah, and superannuation is one area that's a pretty hot topic at the moment, and David has some different views to often the rest of Parliament on this. David, how much of an issue do you think our ability to pay for New Zealand superannuation in the long run, how much of an issue is that for taxpayers and the government?
It's not an issue in the sense that there's going to be some sort of Greek-style crisis and the government will go completely broke. I mean, it can be afforded. However, the issues for me are about fairness.
Even in the long run?
Even in the long run. I mean, the Treasury says that if we resume historic cost growth and have all the same fiscal settings right through to 2060, then government debt would be something like, I think, 223% of GDP.
That's Greek stuff.
That is Greek stuff, but of course you also know that it's not going to happen. There's got to be adaptations over the next 40 years to avoid
So that just means we cut spending on education or on health or in other areas to make sure we can pay for these enormous pensions.
I suspect that what you'd see was actually higher taxes to avoid that level of debt.
Oh, even better.
Yeah, I mean, obviously not an option I favour.
Sure.
But what I'm saying is that it's not the end of the world in a total fiscal sense, but it is a very important issue about fairness amongst generations. And let me just give you a couple of thoughts. People live approximately an extra year every decade. The life expectancy goes up by about that much, and so the pension age you might think would go up somewhat following that. Maybe as a society we decide that it's going to go up half a year a decade, then you're getting an extra half a year of retirement on average, or some figure. I mean, just to sketch it out. But the second thought is, as of 2006, there were 5 workers under 65 for every retiree. As of 2060, and that seems like a long way away. Well, that's basically the working lifespan of current university students. That's from when they graduate this year, perhaps, to when they are at what we currently consider retirement age. Those folks will face 2 workers per retiree in 2060. So from 5 workers per retiree down to 2 workers per retiree. So that's a big shift. And one of the things you can do, of course, is shift the age up such that you've got more people working under the retirement age and fewer people retiring over it. So that's my starting point. I think it's not a catastrophic problem, but it's a very big problem when it comes to fairness amongst generations.
So what's ACT's policy on this?
Oh, our policy is to put the age up by a couple of years, then index it to life expectancy thereafter. And that's in line with what the Australians have done. They've announced their trajectory, if you like, for raising the age right through to 2035, by when it will be 70. And I think that is leadership. I think that is looking to the future and confronting the country's challenges rather than kicking the can down the road.
So what do you think about the government stance on this? You support the government and Parliament?
Oh, I mean, I support the government, but bearing in mind Keith Holyoake was the Prime Minister and he said he only agreed with 80% of what his government did. There's a lot of things this government does that I don't agree with, but on balance I think they're better than the alternative that was presented at the last election. So I will support the government, but I think they're wrong on this. And I think that John Key is delaying the change. I think that his stance on superannuation will be the equivalent of what Muldoon did with his wage and price freeze in the early 80s. It is forestalling a generational shift, because we know that at some point in the next few generations there will be, at some point in the next few elections there will be more millennials X and Y voting than baby boomers. It'll be the first time that the boomers haven't had that sort of hegemony since '84, and of course that was the year when everything tipped and you had quite a large revolution in public policy.
That's assuming the millennials actually vote, because in the last election, about half of them, between the ages of 18 and 29 or so, didn't even vote.
That's right, go out and vote ACT. But know, that I agree that's an issue. It always has been. I don't know if there is a real shift, or it's just these generations are going through the same pattern that every generation does, where, you know, as they get older, start paying tax, try to buy a house, and confront some of the challenges in life. You know, you get more concerned and stop voting for the Greens, for example. You know, that will fix itself over time.
Now, it's sort of a moot point at the moment because the government, while John Key is in charge, has said, not over my dead body, so to speak.
Well, it's dead political body.
Yes,
I don't think he's actually offering to, you know, self-sacrifice.
No,
Yeah.
but it is a live topic, given that a private member's bill from New Zealand First is in front of the Parliament in the next few weeks, month or so, where they are proposing that migrants who come in don't necessarily get access to the pension. What's your view on that?
Well, it's one of those bills that really sums up Winston Peters and New Zealand First, you know, profoundly irrelevant for the length of time they've been around. However, let's just unpack this bill. There's two parts to it. The first is that they want to put a proportionality or a pro rata. So the amount of time that you've been in New Zealand during your working life, whether you're a Kiwi that left or an immigrant who came more recently, is prorated for the amount of pension that you receive. And the difficulty is, I mean, where were you in 1977? Were you in New Zealand?
Yep.
Can you prove it?
Well, yeah, I pretty much can, I think. Yeah, no.
So we're going to go through that exercise for everybody for the last 40 years. I mean, it's not a starter. It's designed to whistle that wee dog whistle at you know, people who obviously weren't here in 1977, i.e. immigrants. And so you have to admire New Zealand First. They have built their career on superannuation and beating up on immigrants, and now they've got a bill that combines their two passions. But the second part of the bill is more interesting. And it looks at Section 70 of the Social Security Act. And I know from people coming into my electorate office that this is an issue. It's basically the the section of the Act that works on how people with foreign pensions to bring to New Zealand interact with their New Zealand super. And I don't know what you can do about it to improve it. Because basically you've got people from so many different countries with different regimes and different rules over there, and we have agreements with some of them and we don't have agreements with other countries. But nonetheless, it is a live issue that probably deserves to be debated. And so I'm tempted to hold my nose on the first part of the bill, vote for it so that the second part can be debated at Select Committee.
So does that mean that you are in favour of the moves to restrict the pension to those people who haven't been here for a lot of years?
I think, first of all, we already do that. I mean, you have to be here for 10 years. And probably part of the reason for that is simply practical. I mean, it would be far easier to prove where you were in 2005 than 40 years ago. Should that be extended? Arguably. However, you know, there is actually a reason why we allow immigrants' families and older people to come. It's basically because if you want to get more skilled, if you want to get more skilled workers, then it actually helps to have some incentives for their you know, older or younger relatives to come as well. So I'm
open to abuse, though. People turn up who maybe aren't so skilled. Some interesting stats out in the last few weeks showing that the overwhelming majority of migrants who come in are relatively unskilled, and then they bring in their parents who maybe have, you know, contributed somewhat, but not hugely.
Oh, yeah, but look, I mean, immigration's a whole other issue we've got to look at. I mean, our current scheme is to have bureaucrats at the immigration department decide whether or not a person is fitting the skill profile of the New Zealand economy. On the flip side, I have people come to me in my electorate office who have jobs, who are productive, and you know, the woman I go to for haircuts, I mean, I know she's a highly productive worker, and she has to jump through the hoop all the time. So I wouldn't put too much emphasis on whether or not they've been called skilled by the immigration department. Some of the most productive people who actually have good jobs find it very difficult, and I suspect other people who the immigration department identifies as schools could well be picking you up in a taxi sometime soon.
Righty-ho, David, we look forward to your vote whenever it comes up, and it sounds like you're going to let it through to Select Committee, but then you'll make up your mind after that.
Yeah, I think that on Section 70, and for all those folks who have problems with the interaction of their foreign pension and their NZ super, it's worthy of a debate.
David Seymour, the leader of the ACT Party and the MP for Epsom there. I'm Bernard Hickey. That was another in our series of Double Shot interviews. Thank you, David.
Thank you.